Laura knows who you are, and then she can go ahead and start our conversation with her. So I'll call on people for just lack of a better way of doing this. Jan, you have you're not muted at the moment, so go for
Yeah,
it.
that's right. Hi, Laura. How you doing? So I am Jan Fields, and I'm still evaluator for the state health department. Still working on the overdose problem, which, by the way, we're making progress. At least this last year, we are. Although, as an evaluator, I shouldn't say this, but we're not quite sure why it dropped. We have some ideas, but we're throwing all kinds of things at the problem. So I think we need to fine tune our little approach to get a really good idea of what works and what doesn't. And things change too. Right? So that's what's happening over here. So, Sherry, you're going to be calling us.
Yeah, I will. Jody?
Hi, I'm Jody Gallacy, and I'm an internal evaluator at the Knowles Teacher Initiative, which supports beginning high school math and science teachers.
Great, thanks, Jody. Gia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mircea Lazar.
Oh, sorry.
A lot like,
Hi,
oh,
sorry.
you're good. So a lot like Jan, I work in program evaluation related to drug overdoses primarily. I live in Michigan, but I work for the Tennessee Department of Health currently. But I also recently formed my own LLC here in Michigan, and I am getting more involved with program evaluation projects locally. So it's nice to meet all of you.
Andrea?
Hey, everybody. Andrea Allen here. I'm largely a qualitative methods evaluator and consultant on design. I have a LLC, AC Insights, and right now the work I'm doing is here in Kalamazoo on a multi-sectoral anti-violence initiative. I'm working as a thought partner, learning partner with the leadership team.
Great, thank you. Danielle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Gritters. I'm an evaluator at Priority Health. I mostly focus on programs in our pop health, Medicaid quality area, care management, a little bit of everything. I'm also going to Western to get my PhD in evaluation.
Great. Angel?
Hi, I'm Angel Reese, and I work for a local nonprofit here in West Michigan that supports people with disabilities. And so in my role, I do a lot with data, whether it's quantitative, qualitative. I help to generate reports for the organization so that they have informed decisions. I help the process with program evaluations from logic model development, outcome measures, key performance indicators, things like that, to keep us moving forward. So I do a lot more than that too, but that's sort of the role that connects me to more of the evaluator sort of role for the organization.
Great, thanks, Angel. Okay, Laura, I'll turn it over to you for you to tell us about yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Laura Luchies with DataWise Consulting, based in Grand Rapids. About 2.5 years ago, our team from Calvin University's Center for Social Research spun out of the university and became an independent research and evaluation consulting group. It's kind of funny, not funny, maybe. Like, I feel like, yeah, I do evaluation, but I was never trained in evaluation. I was trained in social sciences. I have a PhD in social psychology. Of course, research and evaluation is like a big gray area, and they kind of intersect. But a few years ago, I worked with Jan on a project and evaluation of the naloxone standing order in Michigan, which now there's more ways to get naloxone or Narcan by far. But a few years ago, getting naloxone from a pharmacy without a prescription from your own doctor was like one of those big ways. And I learned in that process, there's like a whole language of evaluation that I had to kind of learn and translate a little bit. Our group has about 12 or so employees, and we do projects that really run the gamut. We help turn data into wise decisions, hence the name, and that sounds like what Angel was describing, a little bit of everything from that kind of like early side, logic model development and evaluation plans, you know, actually collecting data through surveys or qualitative interviews or other kinds of ways that we can gather data and using existing data, and then helping to digest it and present it, you know, doing lots of data visualizations and reporting and all that kind of thing. And we work with a lot of different types of organizations too, because we really focus on our toolkit as being something that can be applied to so many topic areas, whether that is, you know, public health, or if it's, you know, business, if it's food and nutrition, housing, all the kinds of things. So happy to be here today. I'm happy when I received the invitation from Jan a couple months ago to be here. So thanks for coming. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? What am I talk about? And then it's like, oh, just tell us about you all and stuff. And then I was like, well, maybe this is good timing. On Wednesday, I presented, I did like a training for the Essential Needs Task Force of Kent County on data visualization. And I'll let you, I would assume, like, who uses graphs, charts sometimes, at least. Like, yeah. And I'm sure that I can learn things from you, and I hope this is a conversation, but I could kind of run through some of the presentation that I did, and we can talk through it. It has 20 different times of charts and graphs and when you might use each. I've seen raised eyebrows, I'm seeing shrugging shoulders. So you're here. I mean, I guess you can leave too anytime and call it internet problems if that's not what you want to be here for. But let me get this presented and I'll share my screen. And I should say, you know, I'm not good at like monitoring the chat while I talk because I get excited and I just keep going. So like just unmute and talk at any time, whether it's a question, if you have an example, if you whatever, think, hey, couldn't you do that? But then let's talk about it. Like I said, keep it a conversation as much as we can. So I should say about a year and a half ago, I joined Stephanie Evergreen's Data Viz Academy. Great resource. It is, I think, a $2,500 one-time cost, and then you have click-by-click video instruction on how to make so many types of charts and graphs, whether it's in Excel, Tableau, Power BI, there's more in R and other things kind of constantly coming out. So I have learned a lot from that. And also Storytelling with Data is a website that when I would just like Google, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? I like found I would land there quite often, and that's a free resource. So also useful. And in our group, we always try to start by, when you don't know how to do something, Google it, because usually you can find something. You know, if you can't find it, then ask a colleague, you know, or whatever it might be. So here, I guess I would like for everybody to, maybe not everybody, but a few people at least, to like tell me what types of charts or graphs might be your go-tos, and what software would you tend to use to create charts or graphs?
I'll go. We use the Qualtrics platform, so I use, you know, their data visualization, their widgets, if you will, there, and primarily use both horizontal and vertical bar charts.
Bar charts are probably the most adaptable and easy to understand. So I love that. Anybody else?
Sure. Probably bar graphs, but I get kind of bored with them. So I always try to look for different ways to visualize the data, but also keeping in mind who the audience is and, you know, how it will be understandable to them. Use anything from anywhere from, you know, using Excel to I've been starting to learn more about how to utilize Power BI now. I have different report writing software from Crystal Reports that helps with visualization as well. It's still a little subpar, but it works for some of my needs. But I try to look for different things where I can.
Yeah. I love it. I
I
love
use
hearing
Tableau In my work, although increasingly it looks like we'll be transitioning to Power BI due to cost. But we use it a lot for all kinds of visualizations, maps and
Mm.
bar or line graphs, for dashboards. It's very useful.
Yeah, gotta love the dashboard, right? The dashboard and the one pager, I feel like a lot of work gets boiled down into one of those things. Anybody else want to chime in before we move on?
I'll also add, we use Tableau. A lot of times we try to take a participatory approach to some of the evaluations. So we'll actually use Tableau non-certified where we can like work through some of the data with clinicians, but then final form, published Tableau dashboards, slide decks with bar charts, whatever maybe will work to visualize.
Cool. Sounds like a lot of different tools and then some go-to charts and graphs. And I'd say many times, yeah, bar graphs can be the best. So yeah, it's gonna be like when you want to spice it up and do something a little bit different, that's also something good to think about. So hopefully this will kind of like help just a couple cases, like be like, yeah, maybe I could use that in the future. So I'm gonna walk through and I can email this out afterwards. I've created a chart chooser like document that like captures pretty much everything that you're gonna see on the screen. So I can send that out. And I don't know if we're gonna get to the second half. I don't think so. But anyway, I think that you all know this, so I'm not going to talk about it for very long, but before you like create a charter graph, like think about, of course, what are you trying to communicate? What is the point? Like as evaluators and researchers, we probably all use data visualization sometimes to just explore the data and understand the data, because you can't just look at dozens of columns and hundreds of rows and like come up with something, right? We got to somehow synthesize it, whether that's some descriptive statistics or creating something. But when we're trying to communicate, others don't want to see like the roundabout process that we took to finally get to the conclusion. They just want the conclusion. So figuring out what that point is the first step. And then here's where pretty much everything else comes in, is choosing the chart to communicate that point. So this is the chart chooser I'm going to talk through. On the left, there'll be like the name of the chart type and a little example and when you would use it to show different things. And then on the right, we'll have check boxes to highlight whether you might use this for demographics, highlighting a single number, how many groups do you have, which could be like, a pre-post or a treatment control, or it could be breakdown by demographic groups, race and ethnicity or income or whatever. You have a benchmark, maybe goal or population data or predictions, and then over time. Some of these will go really fast, but especially if I'm making like a one pager or some kind of thing where I just want to like call out a kind of a simple number, a pictograph can be helpful, where you can have like the pictures or icons that represent people usually, but it could be other things. And then use color to shade. So in this case, and I should say, as I go through, you'll get to hear a few of our projects that we've done that are more public, that I'll be giving examples from. So we've worked with the Children's Healing Center, or CHC, for quite some time. So that's where this example comes from. And another example from our work with Jan and the naloxone standing order study used the picto chart as well. We had a survey and only 1 in 10 people kept naloxone on hand in everyday life, which is kind of surprising because a lot of the survey respondents were folks who worked in like emergency rooms and recovery centers and such, where if they aren't keeping Narcan on hand, then probably not many people are. And then there's a waffle chart, usually a 10 by 10 grid, often of dots, could be of squares, where you use colors or shadings to indicate a percentage. You could do more than 2 colors as well. Like I've done this before with like age breakdown of like 82 children or something, and each dot represented an individual and did like age ranges in different colors. It takes up a little bit more space than like a stacked bar chart or something. Another example was our secret caller study related to the naloxone evaluation, where we called 101 pharmacies in Michigan to ask about availability of naloxone, and 65 of them were enrolled in the standing order. So I have my 10 by 10 grid plus one, because we had 101 pharmacies here. So it's not, doesn't always have to be a 10 by 10. I probably wouldn't do more than like 150 little dots or so, you know, like then you might as well just do a percentage, but. And then the big A number or ban, sometimes you just have a number that you can't represent well, or you want to draw attention to, and just using a colored font, maybe with an icon, really can just draw out some of those bigger numbers. For example, 69% of employees are not fully engaged, or 2,872 touches were made by mental health ambassadors. I'm going to stop there since those kind of go together. If you used any, are you like, oh yeah, I'll do that? You've seen them. They're not hard. Okay, then we'll move on. Donut charts. I can't say that I really recommend them because they're kind of like a pie chart with a hole, and human brains don't really understand angles very well. We understand lengths of lines so much more easily, which is why we use bar charts generally instead of a donut chart. But I have used it a couple times where like I was trying to do a one pager and I just need to fill up the space a little bit more. And I'm like, oh, a donut chart with labels would just fit there really nicely. So you could do that for a breakdown. Or the case where I do like donut charts a little bit more is kind of like in the gauge kind of example here, where you're just showing like one percentage number and all the way around would be 100% and such. And one other donut chart, or riff on a donut chart I made here was like this double layer donut chart, and it has like numbers behind it, but they weren't exact. They were more guesstimates, but really just trying to show the cost of employee turnover broken down by the direct costs and the indirect costs in purple, and kind of approximate proportions. Really just showing like, hey, it's not just about the dollars and cents, but it's about all the other kinds of things that really translate into that cost as well. I should say I made that in like Excel, so you can do like a lot of things. The tree map, I've only used this once. You'll hear a few examples from this particular study, so I'll give a little background. We worked a couple years ago with a professor from Fordham University who was studying the Pantheon in Rome. Has anybody ever been there? I'm getting like maybe one head shake
Yes.
too. Okay, cool. What do you remember most about it?
There were cats everywhere. That's right.
There were cats.
Cats,
What?
stray cats.
I never heard about this. What about the hole in the roof?
Yeah, I do think it was striking just how old it looks.
Mm,
Yeah. Just both on the outside and the inside. It's just
yeah,
such a historical place.
it is very old. There's so many interesting stories I learned from this project. It was like a pagan temple, and like a lot of like bones of people who are like killed in like gladiator fights are like underneath it. And then it turned into like a Catholic church, and it still is, but it has a lot of like dignitaries and government officials from Italy whose remains are interred there. So it has like a whole bunch of meanings, and it's just like this cool old building with a dome with a circle where that's the only source of light, but also rain comes in and stuff. All this to say, religious like leaders like from the Catholic Church especially are like, oh, coming into the space inspires these feelings. And architecture scholars and art historians, there's a lot of artwork in there, like, oh, when people see this, they're gonna be compelled to blah blah blah. And then we're like, well, the person we worked with on this project was like, we never ask people actually what they think when they come to the Pantheon, so maybe we should do that. So we did a survey and use a tree map to break down the respondents. In this case, I just had like a few different slides for this PowerPoint that I was preparing that broke this down. So we start with our 1525 respondents. And then of interest were people who come and identify as coming to the Pantheon as a religious pilgrim, which is a fraction, you can see. And then there are non-pilgrims. And then we also wanted to compare by non-pilgrims who do have a Catholic or other Christian affiliation or identity, and those who do not. And then we could break it down even further, ultimately getting to this tree map, which can be used to show parts of a whole, breakdown of numbers, and the color, you know, hopefully is kind of clear how like those subgroups then kind of roll up to the larger groups. And you'll see these colors representing these three groups in a later slide. I would say tree maps are kind of cool. This is the only time I've ever found it useful to make one though. So it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe not all that often. Basic bar charts, you can do everything. You can show percentages, averages, great for like check all that apply questions. We can continue. Stack bar charts, I'm sure you're familiar with, where you have options that total up to 100%. Good for Likert scales, survey questions. You'll see a few examples from our evaluation of the Calvin Prison Initiative, which has Calvin University students who are incarcerated at Hanlon Correctional Facility in Ionia. And we did a survey of various groups, and guess what? Like, stakeholder support is important, as we can see by all the blue here. Also stack bar charts. So remember I showed that donut chart and I said, I probably wouldn't usually use a donut chart, right? This is just, you can imagine it being stretched around to make a donut or just stacked up for demographics. So this can be a good way, instead of just a table or something, to fit a lot of demographic information in to a report or handout. Okay, now we begin into some of the more interesting ones. A diverging bar chart. This is from a project with West Michigan Works, where these are all job seekers who had come to West Michigan Works for employment services and support. And they took a survey and rated the effort they were putting into their job search and the success they were experiencing on that 5-point scale, from none at all, represented in dark red, to a great deal. And by just taking our stacked bar chart and then lining up so that the low amounts are on the left and the higher amounts are on the right, can really show the mismatch here. We can see that most people are putting a lot of effort in, great, but most people are not experiencing much success with their job search, or at least 2 years ago when this survey took place. So you can use these diverging bar charts for like yes, no's, when you have like desirable responses and less desirable responses. Here's another example. This was like 10 items that were rated in a matrix type question, asking people who've just gone through a program, has your participation in the program, changed your view about this statement? And people could go down in the teal, no change, or they could go up, which is what we were hoping for. So everything that we were hoping for is just to the right of this aligned vertical. And I don't have the text here for those items because this is a project I can't share more details about, but another use of that. I'll take a breath. Has anybody used diverging bar charts? Or think, oh yeah, I could do that for something. Maybe.
Use it, but it does look like it'd be helpful.
And then there's the lollipop charts, which is pretty much like a bar chart, but with less ink. Sometimes like a bar chart can be like overwhelming in your face, especially if you have like a dark fill color. You could make a little lollipop dot with a lollipop stick to pretty much do the same thing. We did this is like just the top part of like a big sheet that looked at qualitative coding of a bunch of grantees' open-ended responses about their programs. And we had our themes in these broad categories that are here at the top. So 91% of all of our grantees mentioned something to do with activities and practices. 79% mentioned at least one thing related to demographic changes and challenges. And then the individual themes underneath show like how prevalent they were. So you can imagine, especially a bar chart with this many things would just be so much blue or whatever. A dot plot, this one is interesting and great, especially if you want to do something kind of like a lollipop, but you want to have more than one group to show. So this goes back to the Pantheon survey project. I'll walk through an example. And especially when I'm trying to when I have like a more complex chart or graph, I find it helpful to kind of build up to it if I'm going to be presenting it in person, rather than just giving the final product to end, which people might muddle through and not quite understand. If you can talk through it one step at a time, so much better. So the survey question was, how much did your visit to the Pantheon help you on a scale from 1, not at all, to 5, very much? Do a bunch of different things. Better understand history, all the way down to strengthen your connection with Mary. So there's artwork of the Virgin Mary there and such. And then if we look at our entire sample, we can see our averages here, and that better understanding history is the top, and things kind of go down from there. But of interest to the person we were working with is that, well, people who come as like a religious pilgrim to the site, might they experience different outcomes? So now this dot plot breaks out the overall average into the pilgrims and non-pilgrims, and weaving that same color coding through that we had in the tree map and throughout the report. Every time we talked about pilgrims, it was always that bright blue. And our non-pilgrims are this darker gray, but we can split that out further into our Catholic and Christian non-pilgrims and the like lighter blue, and other non-pilgrims in the lighter gray. So if I just started with this particular graph, maybe you all would take time to look at it because you care about data and you showed up to this lunch and learn and haven't left yet. But other people, like, this probably is pretty overwhelming to them. So that kind of build up through what in live presentations can be really cool. Dumbbells, which can be done both horizontally and vertically, just like lollipops and columns and bars, you know. I should say generally horizontal orientations are better, I find, when you have like longer item names that would like wrap or be like, that wouldn't fit if you did a vertical. Back to our evaluation of the Kelvin Prison Initiative. First, we just kind of showed, hey, guess what? Our CPI students, they do well in their classes. They're earning high grades. But then to give some of that context, we can compare it to Kelvin students on the regular Knollcrest campus by East Beltline and Burton. In gray, don't do as well in any of the classes except for maybe one tie and one that's kind of pretty close. So that dumbbell really shows the disparity or discrepancy there. You could use it for like 2 points in time. You could use it for different demographics. Or maybe I'll take a breath again. Is anybody like, ooh, dots, lollipops, and dumbbells? I'm gonna try something.
I've used dumbbells a few times, and I think they're easier to read than at some points, depending on, you know, how many data points you have, than, as you said, than a bar chart. Sorry, Jan.
Yeah, I love those. Those are kind of fun. Yeah, because you could do like what, a cluster with CPI students and Knollcrest students kind of side by side for everyone, but now like that would be, yeah, even more width required, horizontal space. Back to back. I've only used this once myself in there. See, I wrote this Pantheon report right after I did the Data Viz Academy, so I was like trying out all my new things for that report. But here with back to back, I should say, generally is good for comparing two groups to look at similarities and differences. And when you see something that looks pretty symmetrical, that's similarities. And when something pops out as asymmetrical, that's a difference. So we have our pilgrims and non-pilgrims again. They're pretty similar in terms of like coding of like just an open-ended written description of their most important experiences, where 44% mentioned the oculus, which is the hole in the ceiling. That's why I asked what stood out in people's minds. But anything related to spirituality or religion, not surprisingly, was much more likely to be mentioned by pilgrims than non-pilgrims. So far, everything that you've seen has been charts or graphs that I've made, but in some cases I didn't have other good examples, so Google helped me out. So I'm just gonna say that this one's not mine, but I liked it. Looking at 2000 versus 2016 travel markets and how Europe was the biggest in 2000, but Asia Pacific took over the lead by 2016. So I thought that was a nice use of a back-to-back. Probably could do a line chart with the 2 lines though, and kind of see, or and maybe even have more data instead of just 2 years. You could probably look at every year, but sometimes boiling the data down and showing less can actually help your point get across better. Here's another one that I wouldn't be surprised if you've either used or think, yeah, I can use that. An overlapping bar chart, which is especially good when you want to show something compared to a benchmark, comparison to a population or a group. So I just made this one up, but fictitious Randy took a personality assessment to assess his big 5 personality characteristics, which are listed. So then you can see pretty easily how Randy compares, above average on openness and conscientiousness and below on these other personality traits. Yeah, so also if you have like a budget and an actual, or a target number of people served and target actually served, or Michigan, and then you want to show like your specific county or whatever, all those kinds of comparisons to a larger group, population, or a goal can be great uses of the overlapping bar. Proportion plots can be kind of fun. They take up a decent, like a good size amount of space for just showing a couple little percentages, but the idea is that this is kind of like a scale from 0% to 100% on each side, and then you can compare either 2 points in time or 2 like scenarios. I haven't used this very much, but one time it just filled up the space on a infographic page that I was creating. I don't know, when I look back at this, I'm like, this is hard to understand, but what I have is looking at employee outcomes. Are they happy with their job? Do they rarely feel burnt out? Would they recommend the employer? And would they be unlikely to leave? Based on the left, employees with managers who don't do the key actions that were listed on the page above. And the right, in all cases, employees with managers who do take these key actions. So of course, having a better manager who does these things that are important predicts all kinds of good outcomes. I like this one. Also just found online. I like most of it. I should say, always be aware of your font size. So often, like if you're at a conference, like you can't read what's on there. So 20-point font minimum on like a slide deck. Anyway, this is share of NBA players by race and share of the US population by race. So we can see where Black folks represent, back when this was, what, 2016, 14% of the population. They were 74% of NBA players, and kind of like the opposite for white folks. So we just see that difference in proportion. It does take a lot of space though to show not that many numbers, but it'd be kind of fun. Slope graphs. I don't know. I'm still waiting for like the perfect time to use one. This, once again, found online, but just looking at 2 different years, 2015 and 2020, and looking at how Amazon, highlighted in yellow, like grew the most. So using that color to call out and something of like whatever is interesting, or you could do different colors for ups and downs or whatever, can be good, but it's pretty much just like a smaller version of a line chart over time with just the 2 points. So I don't know. Line charts, we're getting close here. We're at 18 out of 20. And I don't think I have a whole lot to say of these ones. I wish I had this one to zoom in on, but I don't have it on the next slide. But we have like 2 different groups, and I just shaded the in-between area to kind of highlight like the difference. So just a little addition to a line chart you could do. Just makes it a little bit more visually pronounced, I guess. Or line charts can be great for like financial data of different sorts. Area charts can be handy if it's just a single line chart to fill it underneath, and it just maybe catches the eye a little bit more, might show an accumulation, especially if you're like talking about like number of cases or something like that. Like it just kind of gives a little bit more of a substance behind it, it seems. Or a stacked area chart. Once again, this is from online. I thought this was fun. US music sales by format and year. And you can see like, yes, this is me in high school spending lots of money on CDs, like right here. And so like you can just see the total. If you just took away all the colors and blended them in, you know, is like how much people are spending on music. And then you can just kind of see how they kind of layer on top of each other in that stacked area. Anyway, those are my 20 charts. I have more, but I'd rather have a conversation and unless there's no conversation to be had, but anything that you're like, oh yeah, I might do that next time, besides what we talked about already.
Yeah, it's nice to see so many different approaches to, gives you lots of different ideas.
Yeah, I would echo Jan because just having it laid out, even though I'm a qualitative person, a researcher, I interact a lot with quantitative, and so that conversation could be more effective. Looking at, trying to match it up with the audience, and not taking Stephanie's course to do it. I know it's a very good course, but and then really beyond the qualitative, just really thinking through each of those options is very helpful. I look forward to seeing your chart chooser document. I think that would be very helpful. Thanks for sharing this.
Yeah.
Andrea, I was wondering, as Laura was talking, is what do we have in the way of, data visualization techniques for qualitative data? A lot of times what I'll see like little snippets of quotes, something. Quotes, that might be part of an infographic or something, but how do you represent that in the visual qualitative?
That's a really good question. I think, really just having little quotes from, conversation boxes, little boxes represented. And then, the coming from the desktop research, some big number representations, but that's not qualitative. I would say I have a dearth of methods for visually representing that other than textual.
Yeah.
So I want to take a look at that and see. But I think I really support mixed methods. And so having that conversation about how the audiences would receive it based on the qualitative data might be, because we theoretically know the audience better through having both kinds of data. I think that would be the impact potentially.
Yeah. I was thinking about like if you did like a thematic analysis, say these different themes, right? That are coming out of whatever you're doing, like interviews and focus groups. You have a sense that these themes, like some themes might be more present than other themes or more overpowering than other. Can you show that somehow?
Yeah, and I'm super maybe resistant to simply representing qualitative data in a quantitative way. So I'm very, I guess, cautious about it. But there was, that kind of image would.
I mean, doesn't Atlas TI do that for you?
Oh. don't know.
I mean, if you're going to create themes and code them, I think Atlas TI does the visualization if you want to choose a visualization of the
And maybe
frequency of a theme inside of a particular question.
Mhm.
I think Atlas TI has a few different ways that you can choose to do that.
Yeah,
Or,
I
I mean, you could do
primarily,
it the old fashioned way and put them all in Excel and then categorize them into themes and then turn it into a chart.
yeah, I primarily use in vivo, and it also has some good ways of visualizing the themes in your data.
Mhm. And I could imagine doing something either like a donut chart, or you could even imagine like the semicircle on top that's just like a gauge that doesn't have like a specific number, but it might be like low, medium, high, or weak to strong, or something with like you'd still have to like put a number behind it to make it point at somewhere, but it's more of your feel from the individuals you spoke with, or whatever you content coded or content analyzed or whatever. So like that one, or this one is, once again, it has numbers behind it, but this is based on some documents that we found that actually gave numbers, but then like some other conversations that people were like, oh, well, what about that? What about that? And then it was like, well, I don't know if I can like show numbers anymore, but this could give a sense of how big some of these costs to turnover might be. Um, those come to mind as possibilities as well.
And Stephanie Evergreen did do a chart, qualitative chart chooser at one point. I
Yeah.
was looking at my computer and I have that, so I'll see if I can pop that into, when I get Laura's info, I'll put it in the follow-up email.
Okay. Yep, I watched that. That's good.
Again, you're still attaching numbers to things, but it gives you a sense of how to best visually display those comments if you don't have a software platform that's going to help you with that.
This is not really a data viz question, but Laura, we were thinking something that we try to do now and then with our community practices, maybe to have some kind of an event, where we invite other evaluators or people who are starting out evaluation and kind of building, capacity sort of thing. But then we noticed that DataWise has something like that. I think you guys have a portion of your business where you are helping others build their capacity. Is that right? We're wondering if that's the case. Is there like possibilities of collaboration, especially if we're working in this particular area, which is where we're patient.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yes, at least to some extent. So back when we were part of a university, like kind of education was built into like what we were doing. And so we were constantly having new research assistants and recent Kelvin grads come on board. So we were always training, and then we would invite others to come to the trainings as well. Now we don't have as many new folks coming on because people are staying, they're not like leaving after they graduate or whatever, like a lot of our staff did before. So we don't have as much that we just have going on internally, that we just open, the door and ask folks to come if they want. But it's still part of our like vision to be valued learning partners. So really, like if some organization needs help with something data related, like sometimes they want turnkey and don't want to ever have to take it on. But sometimes it's like, okay, once we set them up with a survey and the workflow to like how to, get the data into some kind of digestible way, then they're ready to just run it themselves. And we just kind of are there for tech support. As far as kind of more trainings go, like I mentioned, I had this training with a little bit more detail on Wednesday 2 days ago through the Essential Needs Task Force. So, and then we have another one coming up next week, Wednesday, where I'm going to be going, I think, through diverging bar and overlapping bar charts, kind of a click by click walkthrough of how to do that. And I think their trainings are like $30 for a 2-hour training. And I can also like connect you with the person who like always is sending out like the invites for those, because like we do some, but other people come in and do other kinds of capacity training, capacity building trainings, that might be, you know, they did one on like logic model development that we didn't lead, but Jody Peterson led maybe a month or so ago.
Yeah, Jody's on our group, and also Emily is on our group, so she has sent some of those out to us
Okay,
before.
great. Yes, Emily's the person who coordinates those.
She hasn't been to anything lately, probably because she's too busy scheduling things, but
Yeah.
any other comments or questions for Laura?
Otherwise, I think that if you want your 12 minutes, you can. Otherwise, we could look at some data together and then be like, what would we draw out and what chart might we use?
You want to stay on for a few more minutes, everybody? Sure. Why not?
If you leave, I am not easily offended, so. Okay. So this is, wait, am I sharing the screen? Are you seeing data? Okay, cool. Some data I pulled about maternal mortality over time, 2018 through 2021, by race and ethnicity in the United States. Is there anything that's popping out, or should we kind of go to a little bit more digested version of this?
Yeah, I think the disparities among the Black population certainly stands out with the mortality rate.
Right. So we look at Black women back in 2018, mortality rate of 37.3, I should say, out of 100,000 live births compared to 17. So like more than double. And then guess what? We've gotten worse for everybody, but the disparity for Black women has gotten even worse. So that is the point that I would come up with this data too. So let's look at the data in a little bit cleaner format. Here, I just kept these columns about mortality rates and got rid of like the actual counts that were used to calculate those rates over time. And then what would be your first inclination for a chart type? Over time, multiple groups.
Bar chart, stacked.
Stacked bar chart. Okay, so then you're thinking of like showing that would really highlight the disparity, but it wouldn't show like the change, the overall growth over time, but that would be interesting.
Oh, that's true.
Maybe just a line chart. Well, we're gonna go with line chart because that's what my slide has. So if you highlight your data in Excel and create a line chart, it might look something like this. And here, you can see the line for Black women really high. And then just some, I should say the chart chooser doc that I'll send out has all of these other like things I'm gonna be walking through, so you don't feel like you need to jot them down. This is a Stephanie Evergreen thing, like use a title to tell the point. Like don't just say like maternal deaths over time by race and ethnicity. Okay, now you're asking me as the reader to look at that and interpret it and figure out what the point is. Just tell me the point. So maybe something like maternal mortality rates among Black women nearly doubled from 2018 to 2021. Mortality rates increased less sharply for other women. Maybe that's too long. Maybe I only need the first sentence. I don't know. But at least it tells me something, which is also more accessible to people who might be using like a reader instead of being able to like look visually at the charts and graphs by like actually saying the point. Use colors to highlight the point. So instead of having, if I'm really focusing on Black women, instead of like this dark blue, maybe I'll use something brighter and also like correspond what I'm calling out in the title to that color. Using a condensed font can help. Like if you ever had that where you're like, how am I going to fit all this text in here? Condensed or narrow font can help a little bit. It just kind of makes it look a little bit sharper, fits more text. And then there's lots of ways that you can just declutter. Get rid of borders and most lines. we don't need these like point zeros. In fact, you don't need as many numbers along the vertical axis at all. Embedding legends is a big one. So if I go from here and I declutter, I can make it look something more like this. And I still might do a few other things, like I have like that gray line. Maybe I could put like a white box behind the word white. Maybe I should separate these since they all overlap so much. Maybe I should put them into like spark lines or mini multiples, like separate graphs, you know, so they don't overlap as much. But it's a lot cleaner than it was. And sometimes just using either like a little notation or a box or just putting a little more detail to call out the main points could be helpful if I'm really wanting to see these numbers. I can't really put them on all of the lines because of they'd overlap, but I could put them just where I want to draw attention. See, look at that, so much better. Anything else that you would do or change, like or dislike about the difference? So line chart, that's an option. Then I was like, and like I said before at the beginning, sometimes you use data visualization for you to understand your data. And then you might want to present it differently. You might kind of evolve what you have. So I was like, all these lines are pretty similar, especially the all one is up because the rates for Black women are higher. So the other three are really close. So maybe I could just collapse again other race and ethnic groups and do a different version. So maybe I could use a bar chart. I think that someone said bar charts. And I should say like, yeah, so then I just did some calculations to get these rates for all other women. Default, what you would get if you made this in Excel, and then kind of goes through some of those same steps. Add a title that actually says something. Maybe use a brighter color to highlight what you were wanting to highlight. And then I was like playing around with, well, which category do I want first? What looks better? Condensed font. And then in this case, decluttering. So you could either choose to have numbers along the axis, or you can have data labels. You don't need both because that would be redundant. So in this case, if I can fit data labels on every one of my bars, I can get rid of the vertical axis. And I could put my legends in here. I don't know if I love this all, but yeah. Any thoughts on those?
I had a question on the line chart going back there, where you labeled that one. When you labeled all, was that all other women or was that all women?
That was all women.
Because I think that's very effective to put in there because you can bring out the point where, you know, reporting the combined amount hides the disparities.
Right.
So I think that was good to include that.
Yeah. And I could imagine too, like first showing all and then breaking it out into the other groups, into like the specific groups. And then because I was me, I always just fiddle around with things and I was thinking, well, should I go back? Should I go forth? And then I tried these like overlapping bars, which I just didn't like this much in this case, but I guess it's like one of those comparison groups. But I don't know, it just didn't strike me as great. I think my top choice was the top right. But anybody else have other thoughts about a favorite option?
I always like to use data labels myself. And then get rid of all the other stuff in there, you know.
Yeah.
Probably like option 2 is closer to what I would probably do, except for I wouldn't put those, I probably wouldn't put the, you know, other and Black inside. Because
Okay.
I think that's hard to read in a white, you know, white font
Yeah.
is out, but that's just
If I
personal.
did, it would have to be like a bolder font. you know, or just have like, put a little color legend right here in this open space or something. And then one last way to look at this. I don't think I like this one as much, but then I was like, oh, I just feel like doing something different. So I made a proportion plot looking at share of births and share of maternal deaths. And if there was, you know, equality and equity, then there would be the same risk of maternal death for all groups, right? And hopefully like lower than it is because have a higher maternal mortality rate than most countries. So this is just looking at the 1 year now, 2021, the most recent year that we had. And I don't know if it just highlights the disparity as much as I feel like some of the other ones do. Like I feel like maybe it's the color, maybe it's just the size that you just kind of like see the white segment a lot. Like it's brighter, bigger. But anyway.
Yeah,
That's
it's
really
not
all I've
very
got.
stark. Doesn't really jump out at you here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as communicative as the other ones either.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't know until you try. A lot of times it's not worth putting it in 3 or 4 different types of charts because maybe you know, maybe you have your templates or whatever, but every once in a while you're like, you know, making that one page that you're going to use for like, you know, an example pitch deck or, you know, a big grant report or grant application or something. And then, you know, figuring out just what's right by trying it a few different ways is potentially worth your time. Well, it's 12:59, so any other last questions or comments?
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And if you think of any opportunities for collaboration with us along the way, you know, just reach out because we're always looking for opportunities to connect and, you know, especially to build evaluation capacity in our communities. That's, you know, kind of we're about. So anything we can do together would be fabulous.
Okay, awesome. And I see Danielle, you asked like the double donut. also
Yeah, you mentioned
submitted.
you did your double donut in Excel. And I've never done a double donut in Excel. I'm curious, did I mishear you and that was a different slide, or
No, that
is
was that.
is it, yeah, well, it's okay. I can dig around. Maybe I have a different version of Excel and I need updating or something. I mean, they have the donut one, but I was trying to figure out how you were able to manage the double donut inside of there.
Yeah, if I just Google double donut Excel, I'm seeing a couple videos that look promising.
Okay. I'll try that. I mean, I don't have a lot of reason most of the time to do it, but I recently did do a double donut and we did it we did a harder approach to it. I didn't realize Excel did that.
Yeah, in some case, like it was a little bit tricky to get like some of the gap widths and stuff, like how I would have preferred it, but yeah. And I think I saw another hand maybe from Andrea a minute ago, or no?
I was just clapping.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we were doing the little React thing. You can do the little clapping.
Yes, great. Okay, well,
Okay.
thanks so much for being here. And
Thank
then
you.
if I get the like handout document to Jan or to share,
You
who
can
should I
send it to me. Yeah, to me.
Okay.
Because I distribute stuff out to everybody. So,
Okay, great.
all right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.